Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about congruent figures in section 4.1. This is our first lesson of chapter 4. In chapter 3, we introduced proofs and used proofs with transversals and working with some triangles there. In this chapter, we're going to work with triangles, but we're going to work more specifically with congruent triangles. And today we're going to look at congruency in general, congruency with all types of figures. So the first question is, that term congruent, what does that mean when we're talking about figures? Well, there's two things. Congruency means that we have the same shape, and that shape is the same size. So we're working with the same shape and the same size of a figure. Now, what that means to us, same size and same shape, is that all corresponding parts are equal. So all the parts that are in the same position are congruent to one another. So we're going to look at our two figures here. We have a quadrilateral, four-sided shape, and they are the same shape, and they appear to be the same size. Now, we were talking about corresponding parts a moment ago. Corresponding parts are pieces, sides, angles that are in the same position. So, for example, we can see that A and W, they are both in the same position. B and X, they're in the same position. Same for C and Y, and D and Z. And we can use our tick marks to determine which parts are congruent. So for example, here we see that angle A and angle W, they both have the same tick mark. So we know that those two, they are congruent. Same for B and X. They both have two tick marks. So we know they're congruent. And we can continue this on around. We see C, angle C and Y, they are congruent. Angle D and angle Z, those are congruent as well. So we have all four angles listed here. Now we also have the sides. So our first side, we'll call this AB, and WX, they both have the same tick mark. So we're going to state AB is congruent to WX. And very similar triangles, we're just going to go around our shape and find those matching tick marks. We have BC and XY. We have CD is congruent to YZ. And we have AD is congruent to WZ. There are all four of our sides. Now, it is okay to arrange the letters a little bit differently here than I did. For example, we could have put DA. Now, as long as you switch those two letters, you have to switch the second to ZW. All right, and so that moves us to our congruent statement. Our congruent statement is the statement that we use to match up all these congruent parts. So for this figure here, we're going to say that, just put a little square there, quadrilateral A, B, C, D, use all the vertices, is congruent to quadrilateral W, X, Y, Z. And from that statement, we can pick out all of the corresponding parts. A and W, those are your first letters. We could say CD and YZ. We could mention side BC and XY. So from there, we could pull out all 8 of the parts that we need from this figure. All right, so here's how we'll apply some of our congruent statements and congruent figures. In our first question, they give us if B is equal to 90, then angle X is equal to blank. So angle B is 90 degrees. And we know from our previous page that angle phi is congruent to angle X. So we know that X is also 90. For our second question, if AB is equal to 7, so we have 7 here as a side length. And from our previous slide, we know that AB is congruent to WX. So we know that our answer here, WX, is also going to be 7. And our last question says, if BC is 2x plus 5 and XY is equal to 10, then X equals blank. So here we're finding our variable. So I'm going to label that information that was given to us in our picture here. BC is 2x plus 5. And XY, that is our 10. And from the statement from our previous slide, we know that BC is congruent to XY. And we can use this to set up our equation to solve for the variable. 2x plus 5 is equal to 10. And now we will solve x is equal to 5. We'll divide by 2 here. X is equal to, we'll leave it as a fraction, 5 halves, or we could write it as a decimal, 2.5. Okay, so there we have our congruent statement as well as all the congruent parts and how to apply those statements to help us solve for missing angles, missing sides, and variables. I want you guys to take a look at your homework practice, and if you have any questions, please get in touch with me.